Secretary of State Antony Blinken will be in New York today to lead UN meetings on global food insecurity. UNICEF says the global food crisis has been made worse by Russia's war in Ukraine because Ukraine is a major exporter of wheat to Africa and the Middle East. The agency says the war is creating a virtual tinderbox for catastrophic levels of severe malnutrition in children. The U.S. ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas Greenfield, writes, "This is a crisis for the whole world, and so it belongs to the UN. We have a responsibility to the millions who are worried about where they'll find their next meal or how they'll feed their families." Joining us now is U.S. Ambassador Michael Carpenter. He serves as the permanent representative of the United States to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Mr. Ambassador, it's good to have you on. How to solve this potential crisis, given the war in Ukraine? From every expert analysis, it appears that it's going to be dragging on for quite some time.
Yeah, well, this is a very severe problem, as you've just identified, for the entire world community, because Ukraine is the breadbasket for a lot of the developing world. Not just wheat, it's the #1 exporter of sunflower oil and many other staples that feed hungry people in countries around the world. And Russia right now is blockading the Ukrainian ports in the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. And it's targeting the infrastructure, the grain silos, a lot of the storage facilities where this product is being kept. And so it's preventing the grains from moving to the markets where they can actually end up on people's dinner plates. And so it's a horrific problem. And we don't see any easy solution, although we are certainly working behind the scenes to try to secure alternate routes for Ukrainian foodstuff.
And there's so many moving parts with this war. The millions of refugees have moved to other countries. The crisis still growing. And then the different dynamics of the war itself. What do you make of these reports that Ukrainians may be forcibly moved into Russia? What are we talking about here?
Yeah, well, so we have credible evidence that thousands of people have been moved into these so-called filtration camps. I never in my wildest dreams years ago thought I would be talking in the year 2022 about filtration camps, where Ukrainians are brought in, they're strip searched, their phones are taken away, they're coerced into providing their passwords, they're questioned, they're often humiliated. And those that, quote unquote, pass are then oftentimes, according to the eyewitness reports that we've received, forcibly deported to Russia. Others who don't pass are, quote unquote, disappeared. And so they go missing. And we frankly don't know what has happened to a lot of people who have passed through these filtration camps. But it's an abominable practice. It would be a war crime if proved true. And yet we're seeing more and more of these reports coming out of the regions in Ukraine that Russia controls.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Ambassador. It's Jonathan Lemire. I wanted to pick up right there on the idea of war crimes. We have one Russian soldier now. His trial has begun. The Kremlin says they don't know anything about it. But there is going to be, we know there's documented atrocities in places like Bucha, other parts of Ukraine. Just set some expectations here as to what we can expect in terms of trials for war crimes, Russian soldiers, Russian leaders, Russian political figures. What is this going to look like? Tell the world who's been watching with such horror at these crimes being committed.
Yeah, so there is overwhelming evidence that war crimes have been committed by Russian forces in Ukraine. That is undisputable. I think, according to a lot of experts, they would say that crimes against humanity have been committed. Now, that is a matter of establishing a systematic pattern of abuses. And so, the lawyers will work on that in the coming weeks and months. But what needs to happen is there has to be a credible accountability mechanism so that the individuals who perpetrate these crimes, but also the entire chain of command, as you just alluded to, going all the way up to the top, if necessary, is also held accountable. And so the U.S. is working with all the various different players in this sphere, to include the ICC and the ICJ. The UN has a commission of inquiry that is up and running. Here at the OSCE, we have a fact-finding team that has documented a lot of the evidence and is trying to preserve it so that cases can be brought. But I'll tell you what, some people question whether some of these folks will ever be brought to trial.
Yeah.
But, it depends on the political context and what happens in Russia. And I wouldn't say that it's, easy to predict at this point in time that it either will or will not happen. But I think we need to exhaust every avenue and seek accountability and hope that one day it will happen.
Do you think that Sweden and Finland and their effort to join NATO will impact this and push it in a positive direction for accountability?
Well, I don't know what it'll do for accountability, but I do think that the fact that Sweden and Finland have now formally applied for NATO membership, this imposes another cost, if you will, on Vladimir Putin, who clearly went into this war thinking that he could get away with this with some marginal increase in sanctions and that Western unity would quickly dissipate. Instead, he's got Finland, Sweden joining NATO. He's got the U.S. bolstering the eastern flank with thousands of additional troops in places like Poland and Romania and the Baltic states. And he's got sanctions and export controls that are starving his military industrial complex of the inputs that it needs to be able to produce weapons and other equipment into the future. So he's really got a lot more than I think he bargained for at the start of this war.
Ambassador Michael Carpenter, the permanent representative of the United States to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, thank you very much for your insight this morning.